You're watching a dev blog for The Doors of Trithius, an open-world roguelike, where you embark on a fantasy adventure in a procedurally generated world populated with dungeons, cities, and the strangeness from beyond. I'd like to share a prototype I've been working on. Now, this prototype is to simulate faction influence. We start with a certain number of towns controlled by each faction, and then each tick, the towns exert some influence, which spreads to nearby tiles. And then each faction will gain wealth per turn based on the number of controlled tiles, which they use to summon armies. So I love watching this thing go. Let's speed it up a bit. Now, all of this is in service to a coming update, where if you watch some of the older devblog videos I did on the faction system, you could see I was really excited to get this feeling like a living, breathing world, and we weren't quite there yet. The current system in game is okay, but there was no summoned armies. It's not alive. It feels like the world is just sitting there waiting for the player. So here I'm trying to come up with and balance a system that feels much more alive. I want the world to feel like you're in this war-torn world, and it's almost like a Civ game is going on around you. Or if you played Mount & Blade, there's armies moving around and attacking and moving, and the player can interact with them, can gain reputation with them, or the player can ignore them, or it can be an annoyance. Like maybe you're settled in a town and then you go to a dungeon, you come back and that town's been overtaken. And if you don't have a good reputation with that faction, maybe they don't let you in. And I love just watching this run. It's heavily inspired by Cellular Automata. If you've seen, for example, Conway's Game of Life, or all the derived similar games from that, it's quite beautiful how a system with a few simple rules can create something complex. And in this case as well, we've got... Yeah, these guys are on patrol, but they have trouble finding the edge. We've got some interesting behaviors that help this run. So this is the patrol behavior, where it finds a nearby edge tile between this faction and the enemy faction, and then it hangs around there, and that often leads to wars because you'll have both sides patrolling. Then we have some attack states and some wander to add variation, and then from that we get this this giant landscape of war. Now you can see it's heading towards a pretty obvious end state. It looks like green is winning. And that is a bit of a concern. We don't want every playthrough your world just gets overtaken by one faction. That's not that interesting, though. I do think it'd be really fun when you play the game, if the map looks drastically different every time, and maybe, and that's gonna very much affect how you play the game and where you decide to go. Let's restart this one. It's getting to an end state. But this can all be tweaked in terms of how fast one faction can take over, and partly they're going to be slowed down in the actual game because there will be mountains and oceans and things blocking their spread, and we can always tweak the behaviors, so less patrol, more defensive state to slow it down. One thing I've done as well is the cost for increasing armies is on a curve, so they get more and more expensive the more you have, and that also slows them down. The main thing here is getting the simulation feeling pretty good, and honestly, I'm really happy with it. The big thing that helped, spending a lot of time tweaking this, was it actually needed a decay rate. When the tiles could influence exert their own influence, what would happen is the whole map would just flood with influence, and it all reached max stable steady state. What I've done is I've added a decay rate. Modeling real life, and taking inspiration from evolution systems, from evolutionary models, and so there's they're basically fighting decay. And the other fact is tiles cannot create any influence. They can only spread. So these cities actually act like energy sources, like suns, and they're slowly spreading out influence. And then you've got the decay pushing back, and while this flickering might not look as pretty in a screenshot, it's actually really cool, because what it means is the faction influence reaches an edge, and that's going to mean in your game worlds, when this is implemented in the actual game, there's going to be no man's land, areas where if you don't want to participate in the factions, you can go just basically escape the system. So that's the current state of the simulation. Next step is adding this, implementing this into the world. That's going to be a lot of work, some more tweaking. And I'd also think it'd be really cool if each faction has their own, almost their own genome, where there's like a set of like an aggression level, a defense level, behaviors that they prefer compared to other factions that gives them a personality. And then we can have, maybe red is more defensive and blue is more aggressive. And you'll see that in your world. You'll see like in their territory, they've got lots of guys hanging around their towns maybe, and another one is sending out attack parties. This is a short video. I wanted to check in, wanted to show you this cool simulation. I think it's time for a big update. I think I've been a little afraid of getting to the heart of the issue. I mean, a little timid. I think the faction system wasn't done, and it's time to make this world feel alive. So thanks for watching. I'll probably do a follow-up video on this. We'll see.